All right, I think everybody is here who wanted to join us today. Just before we start, a bit of a housekeeping. Please note that this meeting will be recorded. Of course, at the end, there will be there will be a possibility for questions and answers. I particularly mentioned this to the one participant who for the moment not allowed to use the microphone and the camera in order to improve the quality of the recording. But please, if you have questions during the webinar, you can post it in the Q&A section, which we will see, and then we can address them at the end. So having said this, good day, everyone. It's a big pleasure for me to welcome you on today's PFC Public Consultation webinar. Today, we're talking about the Hungarian Forest Certification System. My name is Hubert Inhäuser. I'm a technical officer at PFC International, and it's my pleasure to be your host today. Our agenda is remained the same for this webinar. I will deliver a short introduction about PFC International, and then the core element of our webinar today will be the presentation of the Hungarian Forest Certification System by Endre, who is the National Secretary of the national governing body in Hungary. And as I mentioned, at the end, there will be a possibility for clarification questions, and we are happy to answer them. So without much further ado, let's get started. So for those who are not that familiar yet with the PFC system as such, the acronym stands for Program for the Endorsement of Forest Certification Systems. We are an alliance of independent national forest certification systems under the umbrella of PFC International. All of the national forest certification systems are based on the PFC sustainability benchmark standards, like the ST1003, the SFM standard, or international standard, like the chain of custody. This is a purely voluntary mechanism promoting sustainable forest management through independent third-party certification. And we are very, very proud that we are the world's largest forest certification system with our members, and we provide 3/4 of the world's certified sustainably managed timber. Here you can see the almost latest data we have. In dark green, you see the countries where we have members with endorsed systems, and with light green, you see where we have members, but we do not have endorsed system at the moment. And just a couple of sentences about the Hungarian Forest Certification System and its assessment. The revised system was submitted in January for assessment. We did the pre-check if the documentation is ready to be passed on to the independent assessors yet to be appointed. As part of this assessment, we conduct a 60 days public consultation about the system documentation. You can find this on our website. And we opened the public consultation today, which means that you have the possibility until 4th of April to submit your comments on the documentation. We invite all stakeholders to review the documentation and submit the comments if there's any through the website. It's important that all of these comments will be passed to the assessor and will be considered in the assessment report. Again, I encourage everybody to look at the Hungarian system documentation and share their say with us until 4th of April. And that very brief introduction was from my side, and I'm very happy that I have a colleague here from Hungary, Endre, who is the National Secretary of the Hungarian NGB. And with this, I would like to invite him to guide us through the Hungarian system. I stop sharing my screen now, and Endre, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Hubert, and hello to everyone. First, I would like to give you an introduction to the Hungarian forestry in general, and then I would like to talk about the review and revision process of our national forest certification scheme. So in the first part of my presentation, I would like to talk about forestry in Hungary and the sector in general, what we are doing and what are the main issues that we have to deal with. In order to understand the current situation, we have to look back to the history of forestry in Hungary, which I believe its modern era started in the 19th century. This was the time when the new civil type of ownership was introduced and a large-scale economic development took place. And these two coupled together resulted in a growth in demand of wood, especially industrial wood and firewood to the population. And since the transition to this old feudal ownership to the modern civil ownership lasted many decades, one of the biggest issues emerged, and it was the large-scale deforestations. To respond to this problem, a series of legislation was put in place, and the forest authority system was further developed. And that was the time when the legislation introduced obligatory forest management planning. It was obligatory only on large holdings, but still it was a big step further to sustainable forest management. I have to tell you that in practice, there were a lot of sustainability issues, but at this time, forestry science that was hosted at the University of Mining and Forestry in Hungary was already very modern and recognized the sustainable and multifunctional nature of forest, and they promoted this type of forest management. But theory and practice was in large contrast. This era lasted until the Great War, the First World War, when Hungary, well, actually not Hungary, but the Hungarian Austro monarchy was dissembled, and the Kingdom of Hungary lost 2/3 its territory and population, and along with these changes, Hungary lost 80% its forest area. And this was especially a big loss because most of the more valuable, productive conifer forests were located in the high mountains, which were lost, and the forests that remained within the country consisted mostly of broad-leaved species and managed as coppice forests, mostly for firewood for the population. As an obvious response to this situation, forest policy was focusing on launching an afforestation program, but between the two World War, it was not really a time for forestry development, especially because during this time, Hungary experienced revolution, economic depression, and of course, desperate social and economic situation due to these difficult times. After the Second World War, Hungary quickly turned into a socialist country, which led to a massive land reform, including the communization of large holdings and the redistribution of agricultural land to the smallholders. But within less than 10 years, only state land management and agricultural cooperative land management existed in the country. Even the former forest associations were incorporated into those agricultural cooperatives. That was the time when large-scale afforestation programs not only launched, but also they were delivered. And since the country needed timber quickly, mostly fast-growing introduced species, especially robinia and hybrid poplars, were used for these afforestations. That was the time when massive modernization took place with mechanization, and those coppice forests that were used for firewood production were transferred or converted to high forest. In forestry, we say this was a golden era of forest research and silviculture in general. After the political and economic changes in the early 1990s, land ownership also changed. A large area was privatized, and because of the large-scale deforestations after the ownership changes in the 19th century, forest policy and the decision makers in general were very afraid of repeating history again. So the new owners were not really forced, but supported to be part of forest associations, to form these new forest associations, but it wasn't really successful. But I have to tell you that none of those fears were justified later. Deforestation has never been a problem since this transition period. But of course, starting of this private forestry sector came with a lot of issues, with the lack of capital, lack of knowledge, and lack of living traditions among forest owners generated a lot of problems, but I will come back to this later. After the EU accession in 2004, Hungary could access EU funds, especially the rural development funds, and the rural development planning was more sophisticated after that. But still, we had a lot of issues with the implementation of these rural development programs. Especially the private forest managers suffered a lot because of the hectic nature of these financial support. And also, this was coupled with a frequent changes in legislation. And I can tell you that still today, the legislative framework is changing quite often. If you think about Hungary, you should think about a country that is characterized by flatlands and hilly regions. As you can see on this map, the orange area indicates that 2/3 of the country is a flatland. These are mostly dry and sandy regions, and one smaller part is a hilly region. You can see on this picture, the middle picture, this is how it looks typically. This is a mixture of agricultural land and forests. And the rest of the country is a low mountain area. A landscape is characterized by forest. It is mostly covered by forests. The highest elevation is slightly more than 1,000 hectares. So you can imagine the whole country is really a hilly region and a flat area. The area of the country is 93,000 square kilometer. Population is decreasing, currently somewhere 9.6 million people. And I think we can say fairly that Hungary is a economically developed country, but compared to western part of the European Union and North America, we are less developed. Hungary was considered or could be considered as a dry country. The highest precipitation is below 800 millimeters, but typically on these flat areas, the climate is very dry, and some could say that we are on the forest edge. In some areas of this in these flatlands are just not really suitable for forest cover. But climate change already took place in the last decades and affected Hungary greatly. You can see on these maps how the red color, which represents warm and dry areas, occupies most of the country. And this will, in the future, definitely cause us a lot of questions regarding how the forest cover can be maintained. Due to the past, the history of the forestry sector, and also due to these site conditions, roughly 40% of the forest area in Hungary is covered by introduced species, especially Robinia and hybrid poplars. The most important species are the oaks. These are the most valuable forests in our country. And as you can see, represented by the black color on this chart, conifers only have a less than 10% share, and they are retreating due to climate change. So in general, we have broad-leaved forests. We can say that one part is hardwood and one part is softwood. Species composition is different significantly in state forest and in private forest. Those plantations consisting Robinia and hybrid poplars are more typical in private forestry. In 2009, a new Forest Act was ratified, and one of the new control mechanisms in this act was the degree of naturalness of forest. It is obligatory to classify all forests according to the degree of naturalness. I think this is a very handy way of controlling forest natural degradation, even though it is based on the share of introduced species. It is not very much sophisticated, but still it can be used very easily and effectively to track the changes in naturalness in the forests. The wood removal level of wood removal is hectically changing, but it is in a large period, it's changing around 6 million cubic meter annually. Most of it, or at least more than half of it, is firewood. This is a result of the type of forest we have, and the rest of is shared between saw logs, veneer logs, pulp and paper wood, and other industrial roundwood. Compared to the annual growth, the annual wood removal is far behind, so we have a lot of spare growth. The annual forest harvest is roughly 20,000 hectares, which means that the reforestation is done mostly by artificial planting, and this is why 18,000 hectare annually is reforested this way. Why we have also natural reforestation, which covers only around 3,000 or 3,000 and 4,000 hectares a year. The forestry sector in general can be characterized as a shrinking branch of the economy. The share or the contribution to the national GDP is only 0.2%, and it is shrinking. Employment is more important, but still the share is very modest or moderate. It's 0.4%, but still these people are employed in the rural area. We can say that even that 19,000 full-time equivalent employment is important, regardless the share in national figures. Compared to European situation, I think the employment by forest area is among the highest ones. 9.5 full-time equivalent employment take place per 1,000 hectare. The state plays an important role in the life of the forestry sector, not only because obviously it is operating a very strong forestry authority, but also the state is owner of a large area, and we have 22 state forest companies in the country. And also the state has an important function, and this is the operating of the forest management planning. We have a robust forest management planning system, which was inherited from the socialist times when the economy was a central planning economy. And the most important characteristics of this management planning process is that all stakeholders are invited, all authorities relevant to forests are invited into this process. It includes field survey and it is elaborated on regional level. And this is important because this way forest management planning can address issues that cannot be addressed on individual forest management unit levels. As you can see on this chart, the forest area is in 44% private, and the largest part, 55%, is under state management. The community forestry is not particularly strong in Hungary. It's around 1% share. It has a 1% share in the forest area, and we have a special category of forest which is called forest of limited obligations or forest of limited liabilities. The Forest Act considers this area as part of forests, but only a part of the usual regulations applies to these forests. In total, we have some 35 to 37 35,000 private forest management units. Okay, I think something went wrong.
We can't see your presentation anymore, Andrea.
Yeah, that's, I don't know what I hit, but maybe now.
There we are, yes.
Okay, thank you. In the past 2 decades, private forestry changed a lot. We started from a large area without management. You can see this dark gray line. This represents that the unmanaged forest area, which was basically more than half of the privately owned forests, which was decreasing. And it was decreasing because especially private individuals were registered as the forest managers. The specific types of forest management, like forest association or cooperatives, they either didn't really change or decreased. But an unfortunate development occurred recently due to legal changes. The unmanaged forest area increased suddenly, and we expect that in the coming years it will slowly start to decrease again. Hungary is very proud of its afforestation efforts and achievements, I think. Since 1921, when we lost most of our forests, Hungary managed to double its forest area. There are some criticism that this afforestation was made of introduced species, but still these introduced species can contribute to our well-being. This is my personal opinion. Afforestation was also an important program after the economic changes, even up to today. If you look at these figures on the left-hand side, you can see that between those two red lines, this is from the Second World War until the political changes. That was the peak of afforestation in Hungary. But after the changes, in some period, it reached almost 20,000 hectares annually. But due to this hectic nature of rural development funds, and also because the agricultural production is increasing and is more profitable, people are less interested sometimes in some periods in afforestations. One of the most important issue is the issue of those unmanaged forests, and this is closely related to how forest owners can access forestry knowledge. And this has been a very important issue in the forest, private forest development. And as you can see, and as I mentioned, we had a decreasing trend, but after that, this decrease stopped, and today we almost gone back to where we were after the political changes. And another issue which is closely related to this is the area where the reforestation is delayed. We consider this as an indicator of the quality of forest management, and this indicator also decreased after the political changes, but today we experience larger areas, and this can be the result of the difficult access to forestry advisory system. Nature protection and forestry in the past 2 to 3 decades experience conflict situations. There are two types of protected areas in Hungary that are partly overlapping. One is the national legislation, which specifies nationally protected and strictly protected areas, while the European Union has the Natura 2000 networks. And as you can see in this table, 42% of the forest area is protected under either of these schemes, either or Natura and national protection. This is, of course, a long debate, how much these nature protection measures should be compensated financially to the forest manager, and what type of restrictions are justified and effective, and especially these conflicts are important in private forestry. As you can see on this map, Hungary is among the countries in which Natura 2000 network covers a large share of the An emerging issue is the continuous cover forestry, which currently covers only 30,000 hectares, which is not a large area, but it is important because it is at least in the natural and semi-natural forests an alternative to the cutting systems, especially to clear cutting. If you look at the figures, clear cutting is dominant in Hungary, but it's a little bit misleading because in plantation forestry, of course, clear cutting is the most obvious and most reasonable choice. But in other forest areas, we try to promote continuous cover forestry, and if not continuous cover forestry, then at least natural regeneration after forest harvest. Hunting is an important issue in Hungary. I can say that Hungary is not only proud of its forest management and forest afforestations, but also to its wild game management. It is considered to be a national heritage, especially red deer stacks. But unfortunately, the population of not only the red deer, but also other deer species and wild boar is increasing steadily, and the forest managers keep complaining because of the high level of wild game damage. Although statistics show very small figure of wild game damage value, but in reality it is much higher, and it is not evenly distributed in the country. You can see on the map that the southern western part of the country is more affected, and in some areas the situation is very bitter for the forest managers. So this is what I wanted to say about our forestry sector. And now I would like to talk about the review and revision process of our national forest certification scheme. I think it was quite early when Hungary started dealing with PFC certification. Already in 1998, the first attempts were made to introduce PFC certification in Hungary. Some studies were elaborated and some recommendations were made how to introduce it. But eventually it led nowhere basically, and no serious steps were taken to introduce PFC in Hungary. Another attempt was made in 2002. This was the time when a small group of enthusiast people established PFC Hungary Association. This was supposed to host the scheme development process. However, this organization couldn't step any further, and the introduction of PFC certification had been postponed again. In the meantime, the demand for firewood started to grow rapidly after 2005, and the timber market in general turned into a uptrend. And this kind of economic climate didn't really support the large-scale introduction of forest certification. I think the significant turning point was when the University of Sopron contacted PFC International, and a project proposal was accepted to generate interest among stakeholders and also to manage a standard setting process. After considering all options, the Hungarian Forest Certification non-profit limited company was established, which became the national governing body in Hungary. And this was the organization that coordinated the standard setting process, which finally in 2016 was successful, and the scheme was submitted for assessment, and the endorsement was granted in 2017. Right after the endorsement, a meeting was organized with the participation of forest companies, ministry officials, and certification bodies, and also the representatives of the National Accreditation Authority. And here the stakeholders were informed about their opportunities, how the PFC recognized Hungarian forest certification system could be used. Also with the ministry, there was an active communication, which led to a meeting with a high-level decision makers, which included the 22 state forest companies. There was a general agreement between the participants that certification would remain on the agenda, but due to a clear resistance of some of the state companies against forest certification, there was no decision made. It was postponed again, and therefore we arrived to 2021 to the first milestone of the review and revision process. without any state forest company or private forest company that was willing to introduce forest certification. So there was very little progress in the application of the standard. The benchmark standards were significantly changed, and also the national legislation changed frequently in this period. But anyhow, the review process started, and gap analysis showed that we had to do a full revision of our scheme. A year later, the revision process was launched, and a large number of stakeholder organizations were invited. However, we needed to face a very, very low response rate, and this raised serious questions whether using our resources on this process makes sense, knowing that the future use of this scheme is questionable. So this is why the process was put on hold until a real progress was made, and that real progress was the establishment of the first Hungarian Forest Certification Association in 2003, May. So the process continued with the working group sessions. We also had a repeated invitation of the stakeholders. We also organized 2 consultations for the stakeholders so that they can understand the process and the way how they can contribute to the process. And then we started working group sessions and also the public consultation. And finally, the scheme was submitted for assessment in January 2024. Our scheme is divided into 4 document types. One is system description. The second group is the scheme procedures. The third one is forest certification related documents, and the fourth one is chain of custody and logo usage. You can see on this table marked with different colors which document needed to be changed.
Excuse me, Andrea. Just I wanted to let you know that we don't see any slides. If you have them, that please share them, because we don't see any slides.
Yeah. Since when did you see nothing?
Since you started the revision.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's a pity. I'm sorry. So this is the background, and
yeah, now we can see that you can put it on full screen, and
I'm really sorry. Here.
No worries. There we are. Excellent.
Here you can see that here you can see the list of our documents and the changes we needed to make. Only one, there was only one that didn't change. That was the decision-making process, even though we merged resolution of complaints into these documents. But anyhow, we didn't need to change this one. Minor updates were made, especially when making reference to other documents in the yellow ones, and complete revision was absolutely needed in the Sustainable Forest Management Standard and the Forest Certification Group Standard. just like other countries, we fully adopt COC documents and logo-related documents from PFC international standards without any modifications. Finally, I would like to talk about some of the topics that we discussed, and the working group was working on those issues very much. And one was the definition of forests. I mentioned that the legislation recognizes a forest category that is considered to be a forest, but not all obligations of not all obligations apply on those forest area. And in our current standard, we have a separate set of requirements for other wooded land, and we decided not to continue this differentiation. We only concentrate on forest area. The new standard relies heavily on this new instrument in legislation, which is the degree of naturalness of forest. The standard refers to the degree of naturalness in a general. So the requirements need to be applied with keeping in mind the degree of naturalness of forest. We cannot expect the very same requirements from natural forest and other types of forest. But this is also useful to control the conversion of forest and the degradation of naturalness of forest. As for the forest conversion, our standard fully applies the international benchmark standard, which also refers to the afforestation on protected areas. Another issue was how to use or how to rely on current legislation. And the working group decided that forest legislation is changing quite frequently, and it would create difficulties in the future application of the standard if we included requirements from the Forest Act. So we decided to incorporate or include all international requirements into our national standard. One of the most important issues in sustainable forest management in Hungary is the widespread application of introduced species. The working group needed to find a delicate balance between respecting the need for improvement. So forest naturalness needs to be improved, but on the other hand, we had to formulate realistic and applicable requirements. Some of the challenges in standard setting were originating from the wording of the benchmark standard, especially expressions like optimum use or encourage or efficient use made the working group think how to adapt these requirements in a meaningful and feasible way. Conceptual problems were also challenging for the working group. We needed to consider the likely effects of climate change on the one hand, and the need to apply well-adapted provenances on the other hand, and forestry practices that has been proven to be effective, but they were proven to be effective earlier and not in the future. So it was a really hard time for the working group how to solve this situation. But I think the working group realized that not all issues can be addressed on the standard level. We also have to rely on the expertise of the certification body. So the certification body needs to be well prepared to understand and to be able to differentiate between aspects and situation and identify the most important aspects in certain situations and identify less important aspects in the same situation. Okay, that's from my side. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'm happy to answer questions if you have.
Thank you very much, Andrea. I think it was a very detailed and excellent presentation. It's indeed the pity it was in two parts, so we didn't follow the first slides of the revision slides. But I think that the explanation was perfect, so we didn't miss anything. For the moment, I didn't see any questions posted in the Q&A. Now I would encourage the participants to, that's also fine if we raise the hand. Alexander, please go ahead. Just for the record, if you don't mind, if you introduce yourself and the organization, and then please go ahead with the question. Thank you.
Hello, Hubert. Hello, Andrea. I'm trying to open my camera, but I don't know the reason why I cannot activate. So
I allowed it for you. Sorry, it was a general setting for the webinar.
Yeah.
Now you can try again, maybe. Yeah, there you go. All right.
Hello.
Hello.
I am Alex. I'm program manager with Preferred by Nature. I'm mostly interested in the accreditation process with the PFC discussing on this topic. So my question, as I had the chance to discuss with you face to face, in Hungary, there is the Hungarian Accreditation Committee, it's MAB, and my question was if they would be interested in the PFC accreditation in Hungary, or in case we would like to go forward, we should choose our main office accreditation body, right? As I know from my little experience with PFC, we would have two choices. One would be the country where we would like to activate, Hungary, or the second where we have the HQ office.
Well, if we are talking about forest certification, then we only have one program, accreditation program in Hungary at the National Accreditation Authority. This is what it's called in Hungary, the accreditation body. And this program includes our standard, our sustainable forest management standard. It also covers COC, and therefore, if a certification body is willing to launch certification in Hungary, they can be accredited in both areas, but you cannot be accredited anywhere else for sustainable forest management. At least this is my understanding. So
Okay,
did I answer your question?
Yes, this is very positive feedback. My understanding is that if the national accreditation body refuses by official notification, the second option of the certification body is to go in the country where we have the central office. But yeah, that would be great if you have this service in Hungary.
Sorry. In order to use your own national accreditation body, we would need to cooperate with them to launch a accreditation program for you. So that is an official process before allowing certification body to apply for accreditation.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
No, thank you, Alexandru. And I think maybe this is something which worth be discussing separately to go into a bit more details about how the possibilities are available on both sides, because I think that now we really do hope that with the revised system that the developments will be also visible in terms of certified area in Hungary. So from the assessment side, I would just maybe add that if there's no more clarification questions, I would invite everyone to look at the full system documentation, which is available on our website. And please make sure that if you would like to contribute to the assessment through comments, that you do this until 4th of April, which will be the end of the 60 days international public consultation. And with this, since I don't see any more hands raised, I would like to thank Andrea for the excellent presentation and all the details what you provided, and also for the participants who joined us today. Thank you very much, and please take a look at the other webinars, what we had on the other countries. There's a lot of interesting information, the same way as it was with Hungary. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you. Goodbye.